So I said if the Niners lose the next 2 games, I think they should trade Akello. Let's stick with that hypothetical because it could happen. If the Niners lose the next 2 games, should they start selling? And if they should they sell? Should they trade Jaquiski Tartt? And of course, I say that because he's a free agent at the end of the year, and he's good, and he can get you something. I mean, Akello brings you a late 6th. Tartt can get you what? A 3rd, a 2nd?
Yep.
Yeah.
I started talking about this a couple weeks ago on the Faithful Fanatic pod that if the 49ers were 2 games under 500 around the trade deadline, you have to look to move on from expiring contracts, guys that you know you're not re-signing, so you get something in return for them. It's like what you do at baseball every year in the MLB around the trade deadline. You try to give up guys that have value because they're contract. It's a 1-year rental, basically, right?
Right.
So let's say the biggest name I'd look into potentially trading is Trent Williams. If this team is 3-5, if you can get a 2nd-round pick or first-round, probably not a first-round pick, but a 2nd-round pick for Trent Williams based on reputation more so than play, you look into that. You don't have to pay him the $15 million. The only question is who's going to step in and play left tackle next year. Could it be Justin School? Maybe you give Justin School an 8-game trial run to see if he can play left tackle next year. You're saving a lot of money that way. And then, so that's possible. If this team's 3-5, why not look to trade Trent Williams? Tevin Coleman, if he's healthy, try to get a 5th, 6th-round pick for a running back needy team. Keep going. There's Jaquiski Tartt. I like Tartt more than Jimmy Ward. They signed the wrong safety, in my opinion. They should have gave Tartt his contract extension, let Ward walk, and then plug in Tarvarius Moore, who you drafted in the 3rd round. And he played 1 snap in the last 3 weeks. That's enough about Tarvarius Moore. And then you got Kyle Juszczyk, who's a free agent. You're not going to trade him. K'Wan Williams. So I think the most likely guys to be traded, Trent Williams, you get high value for him. Tevin Coleman, Richard Sherman, if a team wants another cornerback later on when he's healthy again. So you have to look into selling your players that have expiring contracts.
Agreed.
Before the trade deadline. Yeah.
I think if you were 2 games under 500, you got to look at anyone really. With the way the offense is playing, there's always a chance if you sneak in, but I think you just got to look to the future as well. But Jaquiski Tartt's hurt. I don't know how long that injury is going to last. How much can you really get for him if he is injured? You're not going to get a 4th, in my opinion, for Tartt. So then I think it comes down to the late 5, early 6 range, or you trade a pick as well along with Tartt to get a better pick. It's hard to trade injured players with physicals, and especially with COVID happening. Teams don't really want to wait a couple weeks to get the guy they just traded for. So I think that hurts that. But if they're 2 games under 500, I think anyone that's a free agent after this year should be at least on the block for the right price.
Maverick brings up a really good point. Real quick, Jose, what you could interpret is that the Niners are saying, well, he's borderline. We don't know if we're going to trade him or not. Let's hold him out and keep him, make him as healthy as possible just so it's a viable option. And I don't know if that's what the case is, but I would suspect maybe. Jose.
Yeah, I think I'm with Maverick. I don't see him having anywhere near a 4th-round pick. I feel like if someone told him, hey, we'll give you a 4th right now of a Tartt, the 49ers should pull that trigger because it's like, all right, this guy's injury prone. Look, he's injured again. I mean, he's a hell of a player, but you're gonna invest the risk reward versus future versus a guy who's always a question at some point. Like I said, it's when he gets injured, not if. So I feel like if it's a 4th, let's sell him out and then let's just plug in more like Nick's plan or even Harris and shuffle around, whatever you want to do in that instance. But if they lose out the rest of the way prior to the trade deadline, you got to start to look to shift off at least a couple of players. I don't think they're going to do for like those high profile leaders like Richard Sherman. I see no way they're going to do it. Coleman, no one's going to take on that contract no matter what. They'd be lucky as hell if they could somehow get Ford and Alexander. But I mean, yeah, right. Those are the ones that are least likely. I feel like Akilla Witherspoon has more trade market than Ford and Alexander at this point. But that was a great one that Nick brought up with Trent Williams one. If they're not liking him, if they feel like, we're kind of up against it, we're kind of a little bit screwed next year. But yeah, everything's on the table at that point because you lose out and you're like sitting, what is it? They're sitting, 3-5, 3-6? Yeah, 3-5 at that point. You're not coming back. I mean, sure, it's like, there's a 7th wild card now, but I mean, come on. Then you're going to make their exhaust all options to lose the 1st wild card game or 2nd. Yeah, at this point, everything's going to be on the table at that point if they lose the next games.
Yeah, I agree with Nick's original point that, you want to extract value for sure. Definitely in the case with Tevin Coleman, by the way. If all the 49ers running backs were healthy all at once, which hopefully they will be in a couple weeks, they're not going to be able to fit them all on the roster anyways. And so there's already reports out that Hasty was being eyed by other teams when he was on the practice squad. So that's just a no-brainer. I do disagree big time with the Trent Williams analysis. There's no preseason this year. The guy was out of football for a year. So I'm going to be a lot more patient with Trent Williams. Remember, left tackle is arguably the second most important position on the field. Yep. And so when you've got a guy like that that's got an all-pro history, I have all the confidence in the world he's going to get back to being an all-pro. I think he's just shaking the rust off right now at this point. But one other thing I'll throw in about the trades, good idea to extract trade value, but you also have a little bit of control, don't you? And I think some people would say Kyle Shanahan's a little bit of a control freak in a good way that helps him out to do his job. But he can then have a say and Lynch, of course, they can have a say where Jaquiski Tartt goes and ship him off to the AFC so that he doesn't end up in the NFC West and you're playing him 2 times a year too.
That's a good call. I think that they almost certainly will trade Jaquiski Tartt if they lose the next 2 games. Because to me, he's not coming back next year. They gave the extension to Ward. I don't see how they can afford to extend Tartt. Tartt's playing too well. He's not going to be cheap. He's not cheap now. I think they've already figured out that they're moving on, and the reason they kept him for 1 more year is because he's under contract and they're making a run to the Super Bowl. So if they win one of these next 2 games and they're competitive, they'll keep him. You don't just give away Tartt. But if they're 3-5, take the 3rd round pick. Take the 2nd round pick if you can get one. But if it's only a 3rd, better to control where he's going than to just take the comp pick and have him wind up on the Seahawks or something like that. Yep. So I think they almost have to because they're so desperate for picks.
One thing I heard is that the Browns are in crisis mode for a safety, so that's something to keep an eye on too. They might give a 3rd for Tartt if the 49ers are in that position in 3-5.
Good call. It's good to know an actual
Joe Woods is over there too.
Hey, I think we just figured it out. Let's make the call for them. They owe us 3 nickels, a quarter, a 50-cent piece.